Hello, I'm Lucas. This is Bit of Lit, and I want to talk about for maybe Midrash Part 2 of John Steinbeck's East of Eden. And last time we talked about the Trasks and Kathy and the sort of their origins, with Adam and Charles coming from Cyrus, who is a fraudulent man, and the relationship between those brothers being similar to Cain and Abel, and Kathy's pure villainy, which I would like to discuss a lot more in this chapter. I think we get a lot more things that put to question who she is, why she is the way she is. And let's just get into it. I'm gonna try and do a little bit less of a plot point by point thing. There's quite a bit that I left out in the last one because they were nice things that I left out, I guess, for the depth of the story, but I was trying to streamline. It was already 20 minutes, so this is already a minute in. Let's just get started. And right at the beginning, we've got the narrator talking about the 19th century and all the horrors that it was filled with: civil war and greed and brutality and just chaos and destruction, and it was horrible. But it's now 1900, the beginning of the 20th century, and things are moving forward, and oftentimes people look back with a sense of nostalgia and sort of forget all the horrors, but they must be forgetful in a way so that they can carry on into the new century that has not been tarnished by the evil of humanity, so to speak, which again, good and evil are just thoroughly ingrained into this. Anyway, we see Adam has made his way with Kathy to California. He's in the Salinas Valley, and he has chosen the ripest, most fruitful bearing land that he could find, and he comes in contact with the Hamiltons. Samuel Hamilton, who's a hardworking man who can dig wells so he can get water to plant his crops and make his own Garden of Eden, which he says as much. I've got my Eve, I should make my own Garden of Eden. And so they get to work. Kathy, of course, she does not want this, but she sort of plays along. Samuel gets a weird vibe from her, and he remembers seeing eyes like hers from a long time ago when he saw a very bad man put to death that he made eye contact with, and it gives him the chills. Anyway, Kathy is pregnant. She's expecting, and she tries to abort her children with a knitting needle. The doctor, she starts bleeding profusely, and the doctor calls her out. I know what you're trying to do, and that's illegal here. And just don't cause any trouble, because I will report you for doing that. And you've got it good, like you've got a loving husband, you got a nice place, and come on, what's the deal? Of course we know the deal. Kathy doesn't want any of this. She doesn't want the kids. She doesn't want California. She seems to just want to be evil and sinful in a way, which we will get to in a second. Anyway, she ends up having the kids, and shortly after trying to, when she's having the kids, Samuel, who has, always been poor, so he's never had a doctor to do it, he comes to help with the children. And Kathy is sort of a venomous snake, she bites him, and she is writhing, and like, she is very much a cartoon villain, in the way that she's depicted in this moment. And another part when she's just eating some food, I believe when Samuel comes the first time, and she sort of like licks her lips every time she eats. she does a lot of the same things, and we get a lot of on-the-nose referential information from Samuel, kind of calling her a snake of some kind. And yeah, I mean, she is really brutal to Samuel, who's trying to help her give birth to twins, which she didn't know she was going to have. Anyway, she has been telling Adam, I'm gonna leave. I don't want to be here. I don't want this. And that's what she plans to do. And Adam just can't believe it. Why would you want to leave now? We've got everything. We've got everything you could want. And she looks like she's ready to go. She gets locked into her room. Adam comes back, and she's got his 44, Colt 44, and shoots him in the shoulder and walks off, walks away, and goes to another place, becomes a woman of the night, so to speak, under Faye, who she sort of becomes a surrogate daughter, and Faye, her surrogate mother, because she's the whore master. And yeah, so anyway, she manipulates Faye into believing that she's really kind, good woman, but actually she's sort of plotting to take over, and she's written into the will, and she's been using razors in her meetings with her regulars, who she's way overcharging. They should be paying $1, but she's charging them 10, and that's just what she's gotten up to. She's planning to charge more. And she has another moment where she loses control because she drinks, and she sort of makes it seem like she's forced to drink, though she also does make it seem like she chose to drink. And now that we've sort of gone through the plot, except right at the end when Adam is forced by Lee, his Chinese servant, and Samuel to give a name to these kids, they start talking about Adam and Eve, and Cain and Abel, and original sin. And as they say, we carry them along with us like invisible tails. The story of original sin and the story of Cain and Abel. Original sin coming from Adam and Eve, Adam and Kathy, and Cain and Abel, Charles and Adam, and also Caleb and Aaron, the new names of the children. Now, let's talk about Kathy, shall we? Why is it there are some things she does that are indefensible from what we hear? So far, she has burned her parents' house down to the ground with them inside and driven a man to suicide, and, manipulated a lot of people and shot Adam and abandoned her children. But which is one of the things that I mean to get to next. A lot of the things that she is shown to be evil in, because she's such an anti woman, so to speak, are expectations for her as a woman, I would think. And she's sort of bucking wild against that system of expectations of her being a good mother. I mean, she abandons her children. She tries to abort them with a sort of feminine object. I mean, it is a knitting needle, which I guess, is sort of phallic, but it is, women would have been knitting. That would have been expected of them. She knows how to knit. We know that because of her time at the whorehouse and, making these little trinkets for the girls there. And probably just how she spent her time and what was expected of her. But she abandons her children, which is not something a mother should do. She tries to kill her children before they're born, which is not something a mother should do. And, she does all these things. There was another point I wanted to make of something feminine that she does beyond those two things, and then using the sort of feminine object, with the knitting needle, and it's not coming to me, but she does a lot of things that go against what would be expected. And she doesn't want to be a housewife. She doesn't want to be with Adam. She doesn't want to be married. She wants to do her own thing and manipulate men, as far as we understand, and women, because men and women both give her attention, as we see when she's in the whorehouse. She gets all the women on her side. And, we've got this connection to Eve, who is the first one to sin of Adam and Eve. She ate from the apple, or she ate from the tree, the apple, or the fruit, that cast them out of Eden, which is how Adam feels. He feels like he's been cast out of Eden by this woman who is in the most fertile land, with children, and she's just sort of a parasite. Like, she just leeches off of people. She's shown to be evil, shown to be serpent-like, and all this sort of stuff. And it does beg to question, what is her perspective? Some of these things are indefensible that she's done, from what we understand, but we get a few lines about how she doesn't tell anybody what she thinks and what her motivations are. And even in chapter 17, the narrator, who talks about Kathy as a monster in the first chapter she's introduced in. Chapter 17, part 1. When I said Kathy was a monster, it seemed to me that it was so. Now I have bent close with a glass over the small print of her and reread the footnotes, and I wonder if it was true. The trouble is that since we cannot know what she wanted, we will never know whether or not she got it. If rather than running towards something she ran away from something, we can't know whether she escaped. Who knows but that she tried to tell someone or everyone what she was like and could not, for lack of a common language. Her life may have been her language, formal, developed, indecipherable. It is easy to say she was bad, but there is little meaning unless we know why. And it's true, everything that she does is recognizably evil or feels wrong. It's, recognizably evil, some of the things for the people around her in her time period, and they feel wrong because she's just done so many things that are evil, even biting the hand of the person who's trying to help her, which is the least of her crimes. Anyway, if she is like Adam, or if she is like Eve, who chose to pick the apple, which is a major theme that we're going to be seeing more and more in the next two parts, the choice, right? And we see choice in original sin. Eve chose to sin. And we see choice in Cain and Abel, where Cain slew Abel because God preferred one gift over the other. And it felt arbitrary, and Cain had a lot of emotions about that and got worked up, and he chose to kill his brother. And we've got these characters who it sort of makes you wonder, like, yeah, if they were given free will and this is something that goes throughout time and follows us like invisible tails, then we should be exerting choice. Yet, in a way, we see these characters, Kathy, Charles, Adam, the way they act, it sort of feels predetermined in a way. But isn't there choice? We see some other characters, for example, Lee, who takes care of the children. And Lee is my favorite character. Maybe not the best depiction of a Chinese person, but I think he is a little bit interesting. I don't think in the case of Lee that we have some kind of racist depiction, because there's a little bit of nuance. Maybe he's not the best depiction of the struggle of a Chinese person in late 19th, early 20th century America, but We have Lee, who is a Chinese American. He was born in America. He speaks just like all Americans. But when he does that, he's not accepted. When he dresses like everyone else, people see that he's different. So, along with the Qing dynasty, after the Manchus sort of enslaved people, and made the sort of slaves wear these curlicue long things that you think of if you think of traditional China. That's Qing dynasty. They have this like tail of hair. I hope I said that all right. They have this tail of hair, and that is what is expected of him. So he wears that, and he speaks in pidgin English. He speaks as people expect him to, and he chooses to do that, even though he's very well educated. He can speak perfectly good English. But how much of that is a real choice? Because people in America won't accept him because he looks different. He looks Chinese. But also, when he goes to China, even though he can speak Cantonese, probably he's from southern China, would be my guess, somewhere around the Hong Kong area, or probably from Hong Kong, but, that's... Anyway, they don't accept him either because his accent is strange and he doesn't know a lot of the dishes and things like that. So he's in a position, he's sort of in a liminal zone where he's not accepted by either, but he sort of chooses to play a role that has already been picked for him because of stereotypes and what have you. So, and we've got it with Adam in a way too, because he has to choose names for his kids. This is a little bit different, but Adam chooses names that have C and A because they start talking Samuel, Lee, and Adam. And can I just say about Lee, I love that, he takes care of the kids after Kathy shoots him, because Adam sort of just lets everything fall apart because he feels like he's lost his Eve, and he's lost his paradise, and he's lost Eden. So Lee takes to taking care of the kids, and he doesn't, he likes to be a servant because he can sort of tell the master what to do, but then the master loses himself, and he wanted to maybe open up I'm forgetting, not a laundromat, because there's too many China. I think he wanted to open a bookstore. And that sort of goes down the drain. That choice that he wanted to make is just not available to him anymore. But Lee raises the kids, and he speaks Cantonese to them, and there's this moment where the kids start acting up when all the men are there, and he, sniffs at them in Cantonese, and they they get quiet, and I just think, like, man, Lee is the best character. He is like a good person who's in a weird position that he has to pretend he's someone who he's not. And that is shown to him as a choice, or that he feels it's a choice. But again, how much of it is? Anyway, Samuel, a little bit earlier before this, says, "You're going to pass something no matter what you do, or if you do nothing. Even if you let yourself go fallow, the weeds will grow and the brambles, something will grow." And I want to connect that to the other thing about the Cain and Abel. We carry them along with us like invisible tails, the story of original sin and the story of Cain and Abel, of the sins of the father passing down to Cain and Abel, who, Cain makes that choice. And they want to make a name, a Bible name, and Samuel suggests Cain and Abel because they are twins of Eve, so to speak, Kathy, but Adam doesn't really want to do that because of the connotations of that. They end up choosing Caleb and Aaron, who are different characters from the Bible. And yet you notice Cain starts with a C, Caleb starts with a C, Aaron starts with an A, Abel starts with an A, and we've got Cyrus and Charles and Caleb, or Cal, and Kathy, and we've got Adam and Aaron, who will both play significant roles. and you see this sort of C betraying A in some way. And that's very interesting in its own right. But he passes down these names, these biblical names, and even though he doesn't choose Cain and Abel, there's still a connection just with that C and A thing, and this is more thematically, I guess, but, just to have some deep literary connections with the C and the A names, but he passes that down, and he still passes down sin, and he's got his wealth that's been passed down to him, and he's going to be using it to raise his kids, and he passes down these names, and I'm just repeating myself at this point. I think you get what I'm trying to say. In this part, we also get a lot about the Hamiltons, which I meant to talk about more, but now we're already at 21 minutes, and I'll just make this real quick. And we get to learn about Olive Hamilton and Liza Hamilton, who sees the wealth of the Trasks as idleness and, sinful and immoral. And we get to learn about Olive Hamilton, who is the mother or the grandmother of the narrator. And so anyway, this has gone on for quite a long time. I didn't mean to make this last so long, but we're going to see a lot more about choice and forgiveness in a way, which has, again, come up just a little bit in this part, and even less so, but just slightly in part one. Largely, this sets up the idea of choice the most. And we're choosing to forget about the past century so that we can move on forward into the new century. But free will is something that we have put to question here, and we will explore that more going forward. Thank you. Goodbye.